call is being recorded.
It's your understanding, based on the evidence, that Dr. Dre told the two guys that met you at the burger spot to kill you.
Dre came to them first and asked the two guys how much it cost to get rid of me. And they said, "What you mean by getting rid of him?" And they said, "Kill him." He gave guys 20 grand and even more in cash to kill me. It was a murder for hire case.
Suge Knight, in several prison interviews since being locked up, has claimed he believes there was a plot against him by Dr. Dre and Universal Pictures, which had caused the incident which had him put away for 28 years. Suge Knight has claimed there was a bounty placed on his head to keep him off of the film set of Straight Outta Compton, which led to two men approaching him, with one appearing to be armed, which led to the hit-and-run death of Terry Carter, which had gotten Suge Knight convicted. Suge Knight's lawyers claimed he was going to the movie set to confront Dr. Dre about what happened in the previous year of 2014, where a police officer had told him Dr. Dre had set up a hit on Suge Knight, which had him shot 6 times. Suge Knight had sued Dr. Dre in 2016, claiming that there were 2 hits put out against his life due to a lifetime management deal Suge Knight had over Dr. Dre. Suge Knight's lawyers claimed Suge Knight had a lifetime management deal in place with Dr. Dre, which entitled Suge Knight to 30% of Dr. Dre's total entertainment earnings. Suge Knight claimed the deal meant that he was entitled to $300 million of Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine's $3 billion deal with Apple being for Beats headphones. In this video, we're going to take a look into Suge Knight's claims of Dr. Dre allegedly putting a hit out on him and other information he has exposed about their prior relationship. Suge Knight was a bodyguard for Bobby Brown in the late 1980s. Suge Knight began to observe the music industry while bodyguarding Bobby Brown, and went on to start managing music artists such as Mario Johnson and the DOC. Suge Knight began managing rap artist the DOC, who then introduced him to Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre at the time was signed to Eazy-E's record label Ruthless Records, being from his time with rap group NWA, who had been a multi-platinum selling rap group of the late 80s. Dr. Dre claimed that although he was producing multi-platinum records, he was only getting very small checks from Ruthless. Suge Knight told Dr. Dre that he was entitled to a copy of his contract at Ruthless, but the manager of Ruthless Records, Jerry Heller, had refused to give him a copy of his contract.
Dre wanted me to go through his contract, so I went to talk to Jerry and I said, "Listen, anything he signs, he's entitled to have a copy of it."
Suge Knight was using the Compton MOB Pyru Bloods from his neighborhood as his main enforcement during this time. Suge Knight and the Bloods went to Jerry Heller's lawyer's office and got a copy of not only Dr. Dre's contracts, but also Ruthless artists Misha Lay and the DOC. Suge Knight took the contracts to record executive Dick Griffey, who had claimed they were the worst contracts he had ever seen in the record business. Suge Knight then showed the contracts to Dr. Dre and the other artists, where they had found out that they were making between 1 to 2 pennies per each copy sold of the songs that they had worked on. The contract showed Dr. Dre's earnings were cross-collateralized between the members of NWA, with Suge Knight revealing Jerry Heller was also taking 20% and included himself as a group member on paper while taking managing commission. Suge Knight extricated the artists from Ruthless Records after using Dr. Dre to set up a meeting with eazy-e in August of 1991, only for the Bloods and Suge Knight to show up and force eazy-e to sign release papers. Dr. Dre and Suge Knight then partnered up to start a record label, with Suge Knight revealing Dr. Dre wanted to call it Future Shock Records. Suge Knight claimed he then came up with Death Row Records, although an inmate at the time called Michael Harrio Harris claimed he had came up with the company name as he was serving a life sentence and had claimed to have given Suge Knight the startup money for Death Row. Dr. Dre was introduced to Snoop Dogg through his stepbrother Warren G, and Snoop Dogg was then signed to Death Row Records and taught how to write songs by the DOC. Suge Knight in a prison interview claimed he feels as if Snoop done more with helping launch Death Row Records than Dr. Dre did.
At the beginning, that helped me start Death Row more than anybody, more than Dre, was Snoop. Dre didn't think Snoop was that good because they came from an era where all rappers was rapping like Ice Cube, and they were shouting. Snoop was laid back.
Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, along with the DOC, made Dr. Dre's debut solo album called The Chronic in 1992. Suge Knight, in a 2014 interview with TMZ, claimed Dr. Dre stole a lot of people's demos which were submitted to him, which were then claimed to be original.
I thought Andre did all the music, all the beats. People send our demos in. Andre redo them. We redo the raps. That's the song.
Distributors turned down Suge Knight because he had an ongoing lawsuit with Eazy-e after Suge Knight was accused of stealing artists from Ruthless. Jimmy Iovine of Interscope Records, who had artists such as Tupac and 9 Inch Nails, had heard nothing but a G-Thang being a single from Dr. Dre's The Chronic, and agreed to a 50-50 distribution deal with Death Row. The Chronic generated over $100 million, with $50 million going to Interscope, which had saved the company from bankruptcy. Dr. Dre and Suge Knight had a close relationship with Jimmy Iovine due to this, with Suge Knight playing football at Jimmy Iovine's house. Eazy-e had Dr. Dre signed to an exclusive producer-artist deal for Ruthless Records, which lasted until 1996. Suge Knight revealed in his Collect Cool podcast hosted by Breakbeat Media that he had seen the details of the deal, which entitled Eazy-e to 25% of all of Dr. Dre's earnings for 6 years, which would be collected through Interscope. This means Eazy-e made around $12.5 million off of The Chronic being released through Interscope. Suge Knight in his podcast revealed how after Eazy-e had died in 1995, Interscope rushed in to pressure Eazy-e's wife Tamika, who had become his estate holder, into signing a release contract by offering her a new smaller deal, which they then didn't follow up on after getting the release. Suge Knight in his podcast said, quote, "Tamika met with Interscope and Interscope said, hey, why you want to get $1 off of everything Dre does? Me and you could do business later on. Sign off and just let Dre out of it. We're gonna do business later." She signed off, and they ain't did no business later, unquote. Suge Knight revealed in his podcast how he had caught a federal gun charge for Dr. Dre in 1993. Suge Knight revealed how Dr. Dre's business manager was wiring money to acquire guns for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg to be taken on the Chronic tour in 1993. Suge Knight claimed the feds found out about the deal, and Suge Knight was arrested for the actions of the business manager, with the lawyers then telling Suge Knight that Dr. Dre would get time for the case. Suge Knight claimed in his podcast that he then took on a charge for Dr. Dre, which he was able to get lowered to probation. Snoop Dogg's debut album Doggy Style was released in 1993, with a large credit of the production going to Dr. Dre. Suge Knight claimed in a prison interview with TMZ in 2023 that although Dr. Dre was taking the credit for producing the tracks, they were fake credits and were actually produced by Daz Dillinger.
What's so great about Daz is that he did everything on Doggy Style by himself. He produced it. So when it was time to come out, the distributors were like, well, they wanted Andre to be on it. So Dad signed paperwork and said it was produced by Dre.
Suge Knight claimed the distributor Interscope wanted Dr. Dre credited as producing the album for sales purposes, with Suge claiming most of Dre's credits on the album were fake. Suge claimed Daz Dillinger signed over the rights and paperwork to Dr. Dre for the fake credits to be made, which had also messed up publishing. Snoop Dogg was involved in the murder of a 20-year-old during this time in 1993, and the lawyers wanted Dr. Dre to provide a character witness for Snoop. Witnesses at the scene falsely implicated Dr. Dre as being at the murder scene, which was not true. So Death Row lawyers wanted Dr. Dre to provide a character witness to prove his alibi and show the witnesses were lying in order to support Snoop's defense, but Dr. Dre refused to do it. Suge Knight revealed in a prison interview how Dr. Dre had refused after Jimmy Iovine told him not to, as Suge Knight claimed Interscope had told Dr. Dre that Snoop was going to prison and Dr. Dre didn't need that bad luggage.
The lawyers wanted to put Dre on the stand for a character witness to Snoop. He wouldn't do it and wouldn't show up to court because he was told by Interscope he's going to prison and he didn't want that bad luggage.
These examples show how Dr. Dre had a close relationship with Interscope from the many times he had sided with them over Death Row. Suge Knight revealed in his 2023 prison interview with TMZ that Jay Flex was Dr. Dre's ghostwriter and had wrote Keep Your Heads Ringin' along with California Love. California Love was then used for Tupac, who was bailed out of prison in October of 1995 from an appeal by Death Row's criminal defense attorney David Kenner. Artist Delray Richardson showed paperwork on the YouTube channel Art of Dialogue, which showed how Tupac was not actually signed to Death Row Records and had his Interscope contract updated to a 3-album fulfillment under Death Row. Suge Knight got $1.4 million from Interscope, which was used to bail Tupac out of prison, with him then making music with Death Row Records under the updated contract agreement. The $1.4 million from Interscope came from Tupac's 1994 Me Against the World album, which was distributed by Interscope, meaning Tupac bailed himself out of prison, making it look as if it was Death Row. His bail was initially refused, which caused an appeal to be filed by Death Row criminal defense attorney David Kenner, as Interscope was not providing help from not wanting their brand associated with the charge which Tupac was in prison for. Tupac's wife at the time, Keisha Morris, called Suge Knight and asked him to get Tupac signed to Death Row Records to get him out of prison, which led to David Kenner filing the appeal and Interscope giving Suge Knight Tupac's own money made from Me Against the World to bail him out, to make it seem as if it was Death Row Records and not Interscope. Tupac's new contract granted Interscope power of attorney and cited Tupac's independent label Out of the Gutter Records as an agreement between his independent label and Interscope when signing power of attorney over to Interscope. Tupac would receive the power of attorney back upon fulfilling the 3-album agreement, with the music being made with Death Row Records and being distributed by Interscope. Tupac, when he started making music with Death Row, commented on the same thing Suge Knight had, which was that Dr. Dre was not really producing the tracks and was taking credit for it, with Tupac saying he felt uncomfortable during interviews with Dr. Dre when he had to lie about Dr. Dre producing the tracks.
He wasn't producing like on my album. Other was doing the beat and Dre was getting the credit. And I gotta go on MTV and no one ain't do it.
Tupac also spoke on the incident with Dr. Dre refusing to show up for Snoop Dogg in court.
Somebody had said that Dre was in the car. The jury believed that. We needed Dre to be there to say he wasn't there. And once they would have saw him, they would have known he wasn't there. And that would have saved Snoop's whole case. And Dre never showed up. He was too busy.
Tupac said these were a few of the reasons which began to break down the relationship between Suge Knight and Dr. Dre. Misha Lay, who is married to Dr. Dre, was said to have started rumors about Dr. Dre, as she had told Suge Knight about a time between 1995 and 1996, when she had called Dr. Dre's bedroom phone and a man had answered, which Suge Knight then used against Dr. Dre by telling Tupac and other artists in order to compromise Dr. Dre. Tupac and Suge Knight can be heard clowning Dr. Dre about the situation in this clip from the behind the scenes of a Tupac music video shoot.
If you were that good, I love you. But if you Dre not gonna be here today.
Not today.
Dr. Dre left Death Row Records in February of 1996, being after he had witnessed an engineer get beaten down in the studio by Suge Knight's Bloods for rewinding a tape back too far. Dr. Dre signed a deal with Interscope to create his new label called Aftermath, with him taking no percentage from Suge Knight, but Suge Knight made him sign a lifetime management deal to be released from Death Row Records and then given to Interscope. Suge Knight, under the lifetime management deal, was entitled to 30% of all Dr. Dre's entertainment earnings for the duration of his lifetime. Suge Knight went to prison for violating the probation of the gun charge which he claimed he took for Dr. Dre after Suge Knight was seen on CCTV assaulting a Crip gang member by the name of Orlando Anderson, being on the night Tupac was shot. Suge Knight claimed in documentary American Dream, American Nightmare how that the first thing Jimmy Iovine had said to him after finding out about Tupac's death was, quote, "You hit the jackpot, you can't beat a dead man's cells," unquote.
When Jimmy Iovine heard, I thought Tupac was dead, right? First thing he said was, "You can't beat a dead man's cells. You can hit the jackpot."
Suge Knight was sentenced to 9 years in prison after his trial in 1996. He claimed in a 2018 prison interview with author Michael Douglas Carlin that his lawyer David Kenner and Jimmy Iovine allegedly began to plot against him to steal money and send him to prison.
They was giving David $100,000 a month, and David said he was giving Jimmy a kickback from $100,000 a month.
He claimed in the interview that an accounting firm Jimmy Iovine had introduced him to stole around $30 to $40 million from Death Row while he was being incarcerated.
I had caught the accounting firm who Jimmy introduced us to. they stole $30-40 million.
In his 2014 TMZ interview, Suge Knight claimed that Jimmy Iovine had sent him to jail and stole the process of demo stealing from him, which he claimed Dr. Dre was doing, for it then to be used on Dr. Dre's label Aftermath.
Jimmy Iovine sent me to prison and stole it from me.
On August 24, 2014, Chris Brown held a pre-award show party for the 31st annual MTV Video Music Awards, which took place at the One Oak nightclub in Los Angeles. Suge Knight had arrived at the party at some time close to midnight. At 1:37 a.m, 2 gunmen had opened fire in the club, aiming for Suge Knight, with Suge Knight being shot 6 times, then walked outside to an ambulance. Footage from TMZ showed Suge Knight being taken in the back of an ambulance to hospital. After surviving the shooting, his lawyer carried out an investigation which claimed to have attained CCTV evidence of an LAPD deputy given the shooter's entrance into the club, with additional footage allegedly revealing them being taken to LAX airport to escape. LAPD sheriffs Richard Biddle and Barry Hall, who had taken on the case, had later located one of the alleged gunmen. The police raided an apartment in downtown Los Angeles and found a man packing suitcases, who they then detained. Sheriff Richard Biddle informed Suge Knight that the sheriff's department had detained a man using the pseudonym of T-Money, who claimed he was one of the shooters in the incident. LA Officer Biddle then informed Suge Knight that the gunman had claimed that Dr. Dre had put a $50,000 hit out on Suge Knight. The sheriff's department later released T-Money from custody. T-Money is an associate of Akon's brother and a former manager of Kanye West and Chris Brown. As we know, the shooting had taken place at Chris Brown's party, which was being held for the VMAs at the One Oak Club. Akon had a beef with Suge Knight in 2009, with Akon's former road manager Robert Conch Jr. having a fight with Suge Knight. Akon claimed it was after Suge Knight had confronted them about a $12,000 debt. Suge Knight in his Collect Cool podcast claimed he actually confronted Akon about taking advantage of 2 young girls. On Hollywood Unlocked in 2018, T-Money confessed that he was detained for the Suge Knight shooting, but denied having anything to do with it.
I didn't have nothing to do with it. Everybody know I was picked up for it.
Suge Knight filed a lawsuit against Dr. Dre and the LA County Sheriff's Department. Suge Knight alleges in the court papers that Dr. Dre hired gunmen to shoot him at the One Oak nightclub, while an LAPD sheriff deputy allowed the incident to take place and was involved in the plot. Suge Knight's lawyer Thaddeus Culpepper claimed surveillance footage from inside the club shows LA Sheriff Deputy Henry Boyd letting the shooters into the nightclub. Thaddeus Culpepper filed legal documents in which he alleges a sheriff's deputy was working security at the One Oak nightclub for Chris Brown's party and was complicit in allowing the shooters inside the club. The officer was working off-duty security for the club at the time of the shooting, with the lawyers arguing that the officer had let them in intentionally other than it being incompetence. The LA lawsuit claimed Sheriff Deputy Henry Boyd was the person who had one of the shooters released from custody and was allegedly seen in a surveillance video at LAX airport showing the sheriff assisting the shooters with escaping. Suge Knight's lawsuit alleged that Dr. Dre financed T-Money and another gunman, who then conspired with the LA County Sheriff's Department to have him killed in 2014, but he had survived the hit. Suge Knight claimed the motive was Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine's $3 billion deal made with Apple just 2 months before the shooting had taken place. Suge Knight in the lawsuit claimed due to the lifetime management deal he had Dr. Dre signed to leave Death Row Records and join Interscope, Suge Knight would be entitled to $300 million of the deal made by Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine. The 2014 shooting case still remains unsolved. 5 months after the One Oak shooting, Suge Knight claimed Dr. Dre and Universal Pictures allegedly put out a second hit on his life. YouTube channel Bomb First with Death Row Records former head of security Reggie Wright Jr. done an interview with a man called D-Dog in 2023 who knew details about the case and claims Universal Pictures and the district attorney's office had allegedly worked towards putting Suge Knight in prison. D-Dog claimed that Dr. Dre Straight Outta Compton director F. Gary Gray, and movie set security Cleabone Sloan were allegedly the main people behind the 2015 incident with Suge Knight. Suge Knight's lawyer David Kenner claimed Suge Knight had gone to the movie set to confront Dr. Dre over the police telling Suge Knight that Dr. Dre had put a hit out on him. Suge Knight's lawyer said that Suge Knight wanted to look Dr. Dre in the eye and let him know what police purportedly were saying. Cleabone Sloan, who previously featured in the film Training Day and was a former gang member, was working as security for the movie set being produced by Universal Pictures. The movie production wanted Suge Knight off of the set due to his reputation and how he was going there to confront Dr. Dre. The movie was also using Suge Knight's likeness in the film. Suge Knight claimed in a prison interview with TheBlast.com that witnesses claimed Dr. Dre approached security and asked how much it would take to get rid of Suge Knight, meaning to kill him.
Dre came to them first and asked the two guys how much it cost to get rid of me. And they said, what you mean by get rid of him? And they said, kill him. He gave guys 20 grand and even more in cash to kill me. It was a murder for hire case.
Suge Knight claimed that an immediate 20 grand was put forward to deal with Suge Knight. In 2023, YouTube channel Bomb First posted what is believed to be the 20 grand check from Dr. Dre, which was allegedly intended to go towards taking out Suge Knight, which ended up with Suge Knight murdering someone. Suge Knight was confronted on the set and was involved in an altercation at Tam's Burger. Suge Knight, while under oath, referred to Tam's Burger as Murder Burger and said it was both infamous as a spot for homicides and well known as a place for criminals to avoid due to its many cameras. While Suge Knight waited at Tam's Burger in his truck, Terry Carter and Clee Salone approached Suge Knight's truck, with Suge Knight claiming Clee Salone brandished a gun, causing Suge Knight to run them both over. Clee Salone was disabled from the incident while Terry Carter had died. The Carter family filed a wrongful death lawsuit with the original complaint naming Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and NBC Universal, claiming they all knew Suge Knight objected to his depiction in the movie Straight Outta Compton and intended to commit violence on the movie set. The lawsuit alleged the producers hired Clee Salone to stand up to Suge Knight and then negligently managed him. The day after the incident had taken place, Suge Knight handed himself in to the police. Suge Knight claimed this was another murder attempt by Dr. Dre, claiming he was acting in self-defense as the men were trying to kill him. Suge Knight filed a countersuit which claims that Cleabone Sloan was hired to handle the Suge Knight problem and was paid an additional $300,000 following the incident. Suge Knight's countersuit claims as both a deal to sell his Beats headphones company to Apple and an agreement to make the Straight Outta Compton biopic began to take shape. Dr. Dre prepared to avoid paying Suge Knight his share of the potential proceeds. Suge Knight was sentenced to 28 years in prison and has since started a podcast from behind bars. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg in their 2022 Super Bowl halftime performance featured Tam's Burger as a set in the performance, which people believe is a diss towards Suge Knight. In this video, we took a look into several times Suge Knight has commented on Dr. Dre since being locked up and incarcerated. This included the times he claimed Dr. Dre allegedly put a hit out on him. Suge Knight ended up with a lengthy prison sentence for involuntary manslaughter while claiming he was set up by Dr. Dre in the case. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, smash the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and press that bell button so you can get all the future notifications for when I upload.